Welcome to the WorkJoy Jam podcast. I'm your host, Beth Stallwood, and in today's conversation, I speak to the wonderful Phillipa White. Phillipa is the founder and CEO of TIE, the International Exchange, and her work is based on experiential learning, creating global impact. And in this conversation, we talk about her career, what led her to create the organization that she now runs and has been running for many, many years with great success in helping individuals, helping organizations, leaders, and helping local causes across the globe to access resources, people's time, energy, expertise to help them solve real life problems. And I think it's a really interesting way of thinking about how do we expand ourselves? And we have a great conversation about how experiential learning steps you out of your comfort zone. It puts you in that place where you don't know if you can do what's being asked of you, where there might be some emotions that go through that. But how after a period of experiential learning, especially one based on kind of real life challenges with real humans involved and real consequences, it can really expand people's thinking. It can help them find their sense of purpose and to help them be better leaders, as well as solving problems that really need some solutions. So step into this conversation with myself and Phillipa, and I really, really hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Well, hello and welcome to the WorkJoy Jam podcast. I am your host, Beth Stallwood, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Phillipa White. Love to meet you, Phillipa.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry, just to interrupt you very
Welcome.
quickly there, but thank you. It's an honor. I'm so excited.
We're really excited to have you here today and to hear all about the wonderful work that you do. But before we dig into work and WorkJoy and kind of your perspective on that, can you tell us a little about you, who you are, and maybe a little bit about your career story and how you got to where you are today?
Okay, yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity. So my accent is Canadian. It would, people who are listening might think that I'm sitting in Canada. I'm not. I'm sitting in Brazil, just below the equator. So even that kind of kicking off shows that there's a bit of a story there. But I was born in South Africa. I grew up in Canada, finished my degree, business degree. I did an exchange in Bangkok, Thailand, moved to England, worked in advertising, and I'm now in Brazil. So that just sort of gives you, I guess I would say that I'm a global citizen. But to help you understand why I took that path and why I'm sitting here just below the equator in Brazil is my, sorry, just saying here, lost connection to server, attempting to reconnect. Are you still there?
I am, but it's telling me that you're offline while I can still hear you. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's so weird. Okay, well, anyway, let's keep going, and hopefully it all does what it's supposed to do. Basically, I'm a bit of a black sheep, I guess. My family comes from the helping people industries. So, doctors, environmental engineers, social workers, public health professionals. My uncle was Nelson Mandela's doctor when he came out of prison and started negotiations with the apartheid government. So I was surrounded by people that had a lot of passion for what they did, humanity, challenging the system. That's what I was surrounded by growing up. And I did a business degree. I worked in advertising in London, but there were things that just, there was talk of, the main goal of business is to make money when I was at business school, or, just in the advertising world, and looking at people kind of being the same and having the same backgrounds and coming at solutions from a similar kind of point of view. And I went to my uncle's funeral in South Africa in 2004. And when I looked around in the congregation, I saw a sea of faces. I saw people from the shanty towns. I saw, the health minister with his bodyguards. I saw medical colleagues. I saw comrades from the struggle. And as I heard the stories of so many different people talking about how my uncle was he was such an inspirational guy, but I realized as I saw all these different people from so many different backgrounds, and I realized, wow, the reason why he was so inspirational is because he stepped out of his silo. He broadened his horizons. He engaged with people who were completely different to himself. And that made him incredibly inspirational, but it also impacted the world in a number of different ways. And so it was sort of that realization that I realized that actually we need to get people in business to do a similar thing. It's what the world needs. We need people to step out of their silos, broaden their horizons, engage with different people, create smarter, braver, more confident, empathetic, culturally intelligent professionals that see the world in a broader view. And by doing that, we create better professionals. So I've created TIE, and that's essentially what we do. And I can explain a little bit more about it after.
Yeah, it's such an interesting kind of life and career, and having lived in so many places and had that experience and seen from your family, and then worked in a world that was probably very different from what you'd experienced around your family of the people of helpers.
Yeah.
And then I always think that in careers, and it sounds like there's a moment that often happens where you realize, hang on a minute, this is the thing that I want to go and do. And it's not always related to what you are currently doing or what you trained for. Like you went to business school and you kind of did all these things. And so often it's that coming together of work and life. Those
Yes.
things aren't separate. They are part of the same thing. It's all part of life. Life is one big thing. Work is part of it.
Totally.
And in life, actually kind of really giving you some direction. And I'd love to hear about that step from where you were, seeing what's happened, thinking about this is what you want to go and do. How did you get from there to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's funny. It was after this funeral that I came back to. I went to Cape Town for it, obviously, and I came back to London. And I remember the moment really, really, really clearly. There was something. There was like a niggle, and I remember I took what I called a mental health day. And I literally sat in this really rickety, old, horrible office chair that was this mustard color yellow. It was awful. I mean, I was a really, lowly paid account executive working in London. I was making nothing. I was living in Stockwell, house sharing with a number of different people. And anyway, I sat in this chair for like 8 hours. And I just thought, I mean, I guess you could maybe say it was almost like a meditation, but I just was thinking and thinking and thinking. And that was the start of what I guess I would call the business plan. And I would say from then on, from that mental health day, I made it my mission, and I just started meeting with everyone, and so many different people. And I remember at business school, people telling me, interviewing for a job is one thing, but an information interview is one of the best things that you could do. And I kind of made that my mission for creating my business plan. And over the course of a year and a half, almost 2 years, I just kept networking. Can you put me in touch with somebody? And then I'd meet with that person and say, gosh, that's a really interesting idea. You need to meet with such and such. And so from it was 2004 until the end of 2005, I created what I imagined would be the idea. I saved tons of money, and I wasn't making very much money anyway. And then I moved to Brazil, and I, had 6 months to figure out the other side of the equation. Had to do some freelancing back and forth, and then I launched it in 2007. So that's how it came about.
Wow. And that kind of thing of sometimes just sitting and listening to what your mind has to tell you and allowing it to give it some space, sitting in a chair and doing it. We often underestimate the importance of just being with ourselves and space to think.
Totally. I mean, that's what TIE is. I mean, we create people, we provide people with the opportunity to create that space to become change makers. But just backing up a little bit from TIE, I couldn't agree more. And even with COVID, we had to pivot. It was a really, really difficult moment for so many people. And we were definitely one of those organizations that was incredibly impacted. And I had a couple of moments when you just feel so overwhelmed, and when you're feeling like something it's just not right. There's something needs to change. So I just don't know what it is. And I remember the day during COVID, I lay on my bed for about have two kids, so I mean, it was logistically really difficult. But you know, I was like, I am just not around for the next like 4 hours, and I just lay on my bed for 4 hours in total silence, and just let my mind just think. And it's such an important thing to do. Such an important thing to do.
And I think with all the noise and everything that goes on in the world during a day, it's a real gift to yourself whenever you can, even if it's just 20 minutes, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be 4 hours, but some time just to allow yourself to think. And tell me a little bit more about, so one of the things I've written down, I've highlighted like 3 times, is like listen to the niggle. Like if you've got a niggle about something. And so often when we're in life and we move through and we're working and we've got families, everything gets really difficult, is we ignore the niggle. But it's the niggle that's telling you, it's like your intuition telling you that there's a change to make, there's something to do, there's a big mission to go on. So you have, you know, done all this networking. I love the idea of the information interview, like seek out more information and see what you can do. And then you have headed to Brazil and you're there. And within 2 years, you've kind of created and launched your business. Tell us now a little bit more about your business and what it does.
Yeah. So basically, the idea is we want to infect the world with a change mentality mindset. So we believe that everyone has the power to make change. And to your point of, you know, how do you go from that moment to thinking to then doing? It's like we want to help people go from thinking they can, thinking about doing it, to doing it, to action. And so, you know, we create that space for people to find their unique power to make meaningful change. So then the question is, okay, that sounds great and everything, but you know, how? How do you do that? What does that look like? So by disrupting people's comfort zones, we expose people to global challenges that they need to solve in only 6 weeks. And by doing that, people discover what they're capable of doing, and in particular, the nature of their unique power. And it's all rooted in disrupting comfort zones. So we shake people up. Now, the way that we used to do that before COVID was we would physically send somebody from New York or London or Toronto or wherever they are, and they would be a professional in financial services or advertising or marketing or, you know, a corporate company, where it's very easy for us to get stuck in our silos, right? So we and in the monotony of life. So it's just very easy. Okay, wake up in the morning, go to work,
Yeah.
go back, you know, go to pret a manger, have lunch, you know, come back, finish your work, then get on the tube, go home, and then repeat, you know, rinse and repeat. But it's, you know, if that's, and then you sort of think about the people that you hang out at the pub on the weekends, and then you think about where you go on holiday. We are all hanging out with the same people, and we're having the same sorts of conversations, and we're not challenging ourselves. But if we think about growth, and if we think about how to be better, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. Constraints are, you know, a beautiful constraint. We need to push ourselves to be able to make that kind of evolution, right? But that doesn't just happen. We can't just, it doesn't happen by accident. We actually have to find those opportunities to grow. And so that's what we do. We put people in situations that are completely different to what they would normally do. So in a completely different country, working with people they wouldn't normally work with, in an environment they don't know, sometimes a language they don't know, limited resources, so limited time resources, limited human resources, limited financial resources, and they have 6 weeks or a month to find a solution to a very specific brief that an organization in a completely different part of the world is facing. And so it's finding solutions to these global challenges. And so we work in 24 countries around the world. We have sort of yanked these professionals out of predictable silos and thrust them in these completely different environments. And doing that, they've suddenly realized, oh my God, first of all, I never knew I had this in me. Second, I never even knew I knew this kind of stuff. And also, oh my God, we've literally used no resources, financial resources practically, in such a short amount of time. And we've managed to do this. This is insane. We are wasting so many resources in our day-to-day. I never even thought that what I knew could actually do that. And as a result, we start that process of people realizing, oh my goodness, I can go from not just thinking, but doing. So we did that physically until COVID. We then had to drink our Kool-Aid and realize that, oh my goodness, we are now facing serious constraints. We can't send people anywhere anymore. We need to figure this out because we have so many different organizations around the world that are desperately needing help. We also know that people are dying to see different sides of them, see how they can be bigger than themselves, be immersed in something bigger than themselves, and be more and do more. And then companies needing to have leaders with the competencies that we create. I mean, having people that have a broader worldview, understand about the power of collaboration. It's not about competition, it's about collaboration. And no one country, no one division, no one person can find the solutions. We need to work together. And to unlock the power in people to realize how they can actually find innovative solutions to many of the challenges that the world faces, and be more innovative in that they can drive that change. So we created a virtual program that now many corporates are involved with. It's a cohort program. It's 6 weeks, 2 hours a day. They don't have to quit their day job. They don't need to stop work for a month. They can do it around their day job, but it gets divisions of people working together, people around regions, people around companies, and they have to solve a problem that's very specific following the TIE process. And through that, it's just incredibly impactful. And we have people, again, just realizing how powerful it is to just step out of that day-to-day, see themselves, see someone else from a different point of view. And the power of putting pressure on a system, it's when you put pressure on a system, you force an evolution, and that's what we're doing.
Amazing. And I'm going to ask you loads more questions about this because I think it's got so many interesting aspects to it. And the first one is this idea of if we really want growth, we have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. And it's not just going to happen being with the same people, doing the same thing day in, day out. That's not real expansive growth. That is potentially little bits of growth, but not really anything that's going to really change your mindset. And I think with that, it's this idea of stepping in maybe with different people, stepping into a different culture, stepping into a different world, and actually having that real experiential learning. So you're not sitting in a classroom, you're not sitting learning theory from somebody. You have a real life problem to solve within this. And I'd love to know, would you be able to, off the top of your head, give us an example of a problem that somebody in one of your programs has worked through?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. I've got loads, from everything from health to the environment, to education, but I'll give you one just because it's quite easy to understand it. This particular one is rooted in communications, but I think it shows you just how powerful taking somebody out of their comfort zone can be for them, but also for for organizations in other parts of the world. So Trevor, he used to work at an agency called White & Kennedy. This project's from a little while ago, but he was a designer, or is a designer, and he was working on Nike ads. So, in design, spends his day just, making really cool, beautiful Nike ads for Nike. And he had never traveled internationally. He certainly didn't have any international development experience. White & Kennedy, we had been working with them since the beginning, since 2007, and this was probably, 2014 or something. So, we'd had a long relationship, and he'd seen people go on TIE, and he'd always wanted to apply. But it was funny, actually talking to me, he said, I never did because I just didn't think I had anything to offer. And so, but he did apply this 1 year, and he got it, which was great. And he found himself in Malawi. Now, as I said, he hadn't traveled internationally more than, I think he'd been to Cancun on spring break holiday or something like that. But suddenly Trevor, the designer, finds himself in Malawi. And his brief was, this particular organization works with fuel-efficient stoves. Now, many people won't realize that one of the major contributors to environmental challenges around CO2 are the 2.8 billion people around the world who don't have access to clean cooking. Clean cooking would be, electric, solar, even gas cooking. These are people who have no money for that. So what do? They cut down trees and they have open pit fires to be able to cook their food, because everyone has to cook food. And what that means is the leading cause of death for children under 5 are from lower tract respiratory infections in many of these communities. One of the second leading causes of death for adults is the same thing. People have to cut down so many trees every year to be able to cook their food. They're traveling further and further, so they're not working. So there's an economic issue. And then, of course, there's the environment. 2.8 billion people around the world with open pit fires to cook food is not good for any of us. The thing is access to these stoves, there's not a huge return on investment because these stoves are clay stoves. They're really cheap. And so, the big energy giants are not interested in clay stoves, and they don't care about the people who don't have a voice with clean cooking. They care about selling their solar panels or selling electric, whatever it might be. But to get these stoves into the hands of people that would make a huge difference is just not on anyone's radar. So these are these organizations that are saying, guys, come on, wake up. We need to get more people having these stoves. It decreases this smoke by 70%. So Trevor, the designer, he had to get out to Malawi, and this particular organization in 2 years had only managed to sell 500 stoves. And his brief was literally, can you just make these stoves sexy, please? That's it. Can you just make them sexy and just get them into the hands of people? And so it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. In 30 days, literally talking to the locals, understanding people, being empathetic, winning people's trust, just experiencing life there, talking to people, and just really getting under the skin of like, what is going on? He managed on the last day to get 10,000 stoves into the hands of people. What was really amazing is based on what he managed to create. The organization had used his materials, and their goal was always by 2020, they wanted to have 2 million stoves in circulation. And they managed it, 2 million stoves in circulation by 2020. What was even more incredible is last year in September, there was a high energy dialogue meeting at the UN, and Malawi was selected to represent these 2.8 billion people around the world because they had managed to actually do something significant with these stoves. And these 2.8 billion people needed to have a voice at this energy meeting, because obviously if they don't, we've got oil, gas, electric, solar, and they don't even care. They don't care about all these people dying. They don't care about they care about selling their stuff. And so actually they asked Ty to get involved with our virtual program by this point, because obviously it was after COVID and we had created our virtual offerings. So we managed to pull together a team of 6 incredible people from around the world, a couple of people, a CEO from England and a venture capitalist guy from Switzerland, and a couple of marketing people from Australia. Anyway, we had 6 people, and they positioned this messaging for the president of Malawi to give at this high energy level dialogue meeting. They managed to get a pledge that Nicola Sturgeon signed, managed to get 50,000 or 10, I can't remember how many pounds, 10 or 50,000, I can't remember, so don't quote me on it, but to support this movement and really put it on the map. And so that, from a development point of view, was, from our point of view, absolutely phenomenal, because that's what's needed. From the point of view of Trevor, from a leadership point of view, it was extraordinary. And when you look at many of the individuals that have gone through, we had somebody from Leo Burnett. She came back after her experience and she said, I saw so many people that had been through this program, and I'm the 4th person, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what was different about them when they got back, but I realize what it is now, and I've got it now. And what she was talking about was her purpose. And she said, I can't just let this go. I have to do something with this. And she bloody well went and created a whole new division at Leo Burnett. It was called Change. It went globally. They won Change. Chicago ended up winning the first ever White Pencil Award with the DNAD back in, I don't even know, 2000. I can't remember what year that was. But, she won numerous awards. And that, they won a first piece of business with UNICEF, which was, worth 10 million pounds at the time. So, I mean, we weren't talking about some pro bono kind of free thing that had been rolled out. This was a revenue generating division that she had created once she had figured out her purpose and then how to run with it. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. And really, like, what it sounds like is this experience that allows you to also deeply understand the power of your own skill.
Yes.
And understanding. And I do think there's something about when you're in kind of the traditional working world, in the corporate working world, in that space, where sometimes you forget that you have other skills because you tend to focus on a specialism, right? That's how the corporate world works. Like, you're good at this, so let's do more of this thing that you're good at. Yeah. And stepping out of that into something where you have to be more curious, you have to be more open, you have to be more resourceful, you have to think differently, really allows you to connect with and understand what those skills are. And I can imagine it's a really tough process, whether it's in person or online, you've got this big challenge. And also, from the sounds of it, the challenges that you give people are ones that make a massive difference to the people you serve and to the world, potentially. So you're not giving them a small challenge. It's here's a big thing that you need to go and solve, that the world needs you for. And I can imagine that actually is scary for some people to start with. And then I can imagine it brings a massive amount of joy when you see these things coming together.
Totally. I think what's suddenly very scary for people is they suddenly care, like in a very visceral way. So suddenly they realize that the decisions that they make, it's not just decisions to make whatever company they're working at richer, or to make, to sell more stuff, or to be able to get more money into the hands of people, whatever it might be. This is actually a decision that they make can impact children, like really vulnerable children in Brazil, or, how many trees an organization is going to be able to plant based on the funding that they get from the sort of the corporates that now support them based on, the material that these teams have pulled together, or whatever it might be, or the strategy that they've pulled together. And it's suddenly, to your point about experiential learning, that's what's so important about experiential learning. It almost feels like you're not learning, but you are. But it's kind of, once you're immersed in it and you feel so involved, it becomes, I mean, I just had this team that just worked with us just recently, and I had, 2 MDs, a regional creative director, and the chief people officer. And they were this cohort team working on a project. And one of the individuals, she got really emotional at the end with the final presentation. And she just said, gosh, I can't believe how much I've got out of this, and it never felt like work. And I think that's, and what's interesting actually is then it's the reflections, because it's saying, but then what was different about it, other than the fact, of course, you were supporting a social cause. But it's not just that. What's interesting is the more senior you get, to your point, the more expert you get, the more siloed you get, and the more stuck you are in these processes. And the thing is, though, is for us to be able to do things differently, to be able to create organizations that are more human, for us to be able to collaborate more, sometimes we need to question those systems. Sometimes we need to question the way that we're doing things. But it's almost like it's hard for us to break out of that really, really siloed way of thinking, because of, just the way that our roles have been created. And it was interesting because in these conversations with this team, they were just so amazed at how different this process was. But it was work. They were doing, I mean, it was really intense. It was 2 hours a day, intense work for 6 weeks. And they said it never felt like work. And how amazing, because it was so human. I said, so why was it human? And they said, well, because we just worked differently. We worked with the organization in a totally different way. And I said, yeah, it was collaboration. It wasn't about you working in a silo, coming up with these solutions, and then, okay, person, here's what we've come up with. Oh, you don't like it? Okay, we're going to go back. And then it's kind of this consultancy kind of relationship. This was a joint endeavor to come together with a solution. And what that then shows people is the power of collaboration, the power of talking and working closely with people outside of your network and outside of your world, and talking to people on the front lines, because that's actually the only way that you can find solutions. It's unbelievable how with our projects, we say it's important to talk to the locals. You have to talk to the locals. That's the only way you're going to come up with the solutions. And it's so funny how these teams, they go in 3 weeks in, And inevitably, it always happens. Yeah, it's so strange. Like, we just haven't quite had our breakthrough yet. We haven't had our breakthrough yet. And I said, okay, so just tell me the conversations you've had. And we have coaching throughout. And they're like, oh no, we've spoken to these people. And I said, okay, so have you had a conversation yet with you know, what we would call like the clients of the organizations, or the beneficiaries, or the people, like the people who the lived experiences on the ground. So the kids, for example, or, you know, people in the communities, like the people that are living these experiences. No, actually, we haven't quite done that yet. And I said, okay, well, it's probable that you're not going to be able to come up with any kind of solutions until you do that. And it's every single time they have those conversations. And then all of a sudden, this huge light bulb goes off. Oh my gosh, you have no idea. And then they never talk to me again for the next like 3
like, we've
weeks.
got the answer.
We know it now. Yeah. And then they're running. It's like training wheels, and then suddenly the training wheels get blasted off, and they're like, okay, here we go.
It's so funny because I so often say to people when I'm working with organizations, it's like, have you asked the people what they think the solution is, the people who work here? And they're like, oh no. And I'm like, okay, the people who are closest to the problem usually have the answer.
Yeah.
And they look at me like I've gone mad. I'm like, no, can I just talk to some people? And you're like, okay, this is what the real problem is. This is what the real gap is. This is what the communication issue is. You know, you always find the answer from talking to the people closest to the problem, whether that's customers or, you know, your beneficiaries or your employees.
And then it makes you wonder, like, why does this not happen more? I mean, even if you're looking at the banking system, right? The banking system, do they go and talk to people? Because if they did, I'm pretty sure that there'd be some really interesting solutions, certainly here in Brazil. I mean, it's just madness. You sort of think things could work so differently if you just talk to people.
Yeah. You know? Just have those conversations, but it's interesting because it's a bit like the whole you have to walk a mile in another person's shoes thing. You have to take your own shoes off first. You have to take away your own perspective and allow other people's perspectives to come into your mind. And I think that's one of the things that people find hardest. Is they consult, but they don't actually take away their own opinion before they do it.
So, and you know what that's rooted in? Because we see this all the time: vulnerability.
Yeah.
So we see this all the time. So you have these individuals who are super senior, and they're used to having all the answers. And then they're freaking out in the first 3 weeks because they don't know the answers. And then, but the thing is to be able to, you have to be honest with yourself and with everyone else that you don't know the answers, but that's okay because that's normal. Of course you don't know the answers. You're wanting to find the answers. And then you need to be vulnerable and have those conversations with people that you wouldn't normally talk to. And then, you know, try and unearth those solutions or figure out what those answers are. But you're having to put yourself in that sort of vulnerable position to be able to get there. And that is really hard. And it's
so hard for people. But if you think about it, the entire Western education system, and every time people be promoted, the whole reward and promotion system and, you know, careers for so long have been built on have the right answer. They've been built on like right answer equals you are a good human in our system way of thinking. You know, you get an A, you get to a good university, you get a good university, you get a good job. You're good at your job. You have all the answers. You come up with the things that people want to hear. You get promoted. And then suddenly you're in a leadership position where the answer is no longer the thing that you need to have. But you're never taught how to live like that.
Totally. Exactly. And that's exactly what you've just said. That's the root of what we're doing. Because it's only once you step out of that normal way, those processes, the normal ways of doing things, you suddenly find yourself working in a completely different sector with different people, with different needs. And suddenly it's kind of blowing everything up and it feels uncomfortable. And yes, sometimes there are tears and sometimes there's sort of, it's you know, it feels uncomfortable, but that's what then helps us become better and learn, you know, more interesting ways of doing things and actually working more towards a world that we all want to live in, you know, one where leaders are empathetic and culturally intelligent and flexible and open and have all of those competencies, you know, want to work in a collaborative way. It's not about competition and me being better than you and keeping everything close to me and you know, not sharing. Like, I feel like that world is dying. And the thing is the only way that we can get to the world that we're wanting to get to is helping these leaders understand it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay not to have the answers. Don't feel that you need to blag everything. You can say that you don't know. And actually that there's a strength there, right?
Yeah. And there's a strength there to say to the people who do know, I don't know, what do you think we should do? You know, what's your idea?
Yeah.
And that is also then how you build the people who are more junior, because they're able to give their opinion and have an idea and to see something through. So I totally love how this is allowing that to happen. And you talk there about it, sometimes it's emotional, you know, you get tears, etc. I always think that a good cry either releases something or allows you to let something go. It's like it's either about to just open the door to something or to let something go that's in the past, or to you're usually about to have a breakthrough of some kind. I think if you get that emotional, it's a good thing to have that.
Pushing people slightly over the edge is, you know, that's when the evolution happens.
Like right at the edge of your comfort zone, not just a little bit out of your comfort zone, which might be your kind of classroom training stuff, actually at the edge of it, because there are real people involved. There are real challenges involved. So I can totally see how there are so many benefactors as well within this. So the individuals who are on the program, the leaders, get a benefit from it. Their organizations get a benefit from it when they come back with a whole set of different mindset, different skills. And of course, the partners that you're working with in those local areas who need some expertise and some support are getting the benefit too. So it's like a win-win-win.
Totally. And they would never be able to afford it. You know, I mean, these are really, really senior individuals from big companies that suddenly descend upon these organizations. And with our training, of course, we help them be empathetic and help them, you know, it's not a consultation kind of experience. And of course, we talk a lot about the win-win-win. It has to be a win-win. So it's never been volunteer tourism. You know, let's use these organizations for the benefit of these professionals at all. I mean, it has to be a win-win-win, and it always has been. And that's something we really feel super proud of.
It's so amazing to hear all these things, and I love also the story that this comes from. Kind of you sat there going, there's something to change, there's something in the world that needs it, and using your expertise and just that what sounds like sheer determination to make it happen. It is really wonderful. And I honestly, I could talk to you for hours and hours. We could do so many different examples on this one. But I think if it's okay with you, we'll move on to some quick fire questions. Are you up for it?
I hope I can do it. Yep.
You don't have to answer. You've got time to think if you want them.
Okay.
My first question is, what is always guaranteed to bring you personally a little bit of work joy?
Without question, being able to live out my purpose every day.
Yeah. That must be a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And I honestly, like, that's kind of my goal as well, is just to help people find their purpose. Because once you've done that, oh my God, it is, you know the feeling.
It's a little magic key, isn't it, in life? If you can find it and work with it, it definitely is a wonderful thing. Second question, what book are you currently reading?
Yeah, so I just finished it, and I'm going to just talk because it is called Citizens, and I want to do a plug for it because so much of what I've just been talking about is rooted in that. It's written by a very good friend of mine, John Alexander. It is incredible. It's basically about, you know, the individual in society, and it's not about being a consumer, it's about being a human. And you know what the right thing to do is, and the idea is like someone who can and wants to shape the world and society. Sorry, we've got a bit of children coming. I did warn you.
Hello, dogs. We're dogs, always happy to hear a dog on this podcast. Don't you worry. It's usually mine, but we're very happy to say hi to the dogs. Hello, dogs.
Yeah, he's a German short-haired pointer, 38 kilo, very happy guy, but he loves it when people come to the door. So sorry about that. Children coming home from school. Anyway, it's just sort of about the citizen tapping into the resources of everyone that can sort of find the best outcomes as society as a whole. So it's not about competition. It's not about consumerism. It's about being a citizen, a part of the whole. It's an amazing book, and I highly recommend anyone to read it.
It's going on my list right now. Yeah. What is the best or most useful bit of advice that someone has given to you in your life that you always find yourself coming back to?
So I love this question. Uh, if it's 3 words, I would say don't give up.
Yeah.
Keep going. There's been so many, gosh, my dad was one of the most inspirational people in my life as well. Like his brother was the Nelson Mandela's doctor, and my dad, and like the two of them have always been. They've both passed away now, but they come visit me in my dreams quite often. And I just there's people that try and bring you down. My dad died of cancer. He talked a lot about the meanies. Don't let the meanies win.
Yeah.
And just gosh, there's been so many moments. I remember being 7. This is a bit hardcore, but just I think it's important. I was 7. I was walking home from school, and some stupid kid at 15 years old decided to put a switchblade to my neck and just scare me. I mean, he didn't want to. He was with 3 friends. They were teenagers. They were in front of the junior high school, and they did that. Now I was totally terrified, and I would say that I was probably pretty traumatized for a little while. I might even still be traumatized. I have no idea. But anyway, what my dad and mom did, but it was more my dad. He's like, "You're still going to walk to school. You're going to still walk to school. Don't let the meanies win." And he obviously they supported me, and I'm sure I didn't feel completely abandoned by any stretch of the imagination, but without question, that attitude to just people trying to kind of have to bring you down. My dad's always laughed in the face of that, and he's just do not be a victim. It's about positivity, it's about resilience, about moving forward. And as a result, I guess that's why I'm all about empowerment and helping other people see the
Yeah.
power that they have within themselves, because it's about finding those solutions. It's about making change. It's about don't let people bring you down. Keep going.
Yeah, I love that. And just keep going and, find the people who can help you. You don't have to do it alone, but
Totally.
don't give up. Yeah,
Totally.
brilliant. And thinking about from you personally, what is your one super practical tip, a bit of advice for our listeners, that's something that you think they could go and do today, tomorrow, that
Mm.
might bring them a little bit more work joy?
That's such a good question. I I honestly, I just think it's just to keep being inspired.
Yeah.
I think it's, look for inspiration. One of my mentors, his name's Sir John Haggerty. He talks about do interesting things, and interesting things will happen to you. And the two of us created kind of a lot of his words are, this is his thinking, but we put this together because it summarizes Thai, but it also just summarizes just how I see the world. Look for inspiration in the unexpected and the difficult. So
Yeah.
it might be reading something that you wouldn't normally read. Maybe you don't normally read the Financial Times. Read it because you might just see something different. Just step out of your way of doing things normally. Expand your personal circle. Talk to the Uber driver.
Mm,
Have conversations with people that you wouldn't normally. Push through boundaries to unlock potential. So
yeah.
just push yourself a little bit more. Be brave and dare to be different. Challenge the status quo. If something feels that you just, at work, if there's something that just doesn't quite feel right, rather than complaining about it, or rather than just sort of continuing to live, maybe that's an opportunity. Maybe that's, if you're feeling it, pretty much guaranteed other people are feeling
Mm,
it too. And maybe that's an opportunity for you to do something different, get involved with something different, and get more, maybe that's a way to kind of realize more of your purpose. So I
yeah.
think, I think that's day-to-day stuff that you can just do that can start to impact your life and make you feel like you're moving forward.
Yeah, and it's almost like in any situation, isn't it? Rather than looking at it, going, it's a situation. It's going, what could inspire me about this situation? What could I do
Totally.
about it? How could I do something different with it? How
Yeah.
could I talk to someone else? I mean, I've had, you know, some of the best conversations I've ever had have been with like taxi drivers. I,
Totally.
I, I had one a couple of months ago that I actually blogged about because it was so good. There's like this was like the best 20 minutes of my week. It was
Right.
amazing. So if you just choose to step into it. I love it.
Yeah. And
Great
actually there's
advice.
one more. Yeah, be constantly curious to be constantly inspired. So that's you've actually, that was the one that I forgot to say, and that was exactly it. So
Yeah.
that's just it. It's just fine. Be curious. That's actually one thing that's super sad, isn't it? As kids, we're super curious. So your children are just constantly asking you questions, like, oh my God, another question, seriously. But they're curious. When do we lose that? Why do we lose that?
I don't know. I might find a psychologist who can answer that question because it'd be really interesting. But I feel like over the course of the years of kind of structured education, all that kind of stuff, we probably don't get rewarded for being so curious anymore. So we stop doing it.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
imagine. But there's
Yeah.
probably a number of reasons for it.
Yeah.
And then my final question for you is, I'm sure many people want to find out more about you and about Ty, but where can they find out more about you, your work, and anything that you'd like to recommend that people kind of do to get in touch with you?
Oh, well, thank you. That's so nice. I'll do a little bit of a plug. Well, I also have a podcast. As I was saying to Beth earlier, it's really nice to be on this side of it because usually it's me asking the question. It's called Ty Unearthed. It's on all podcast platforms. Basically, the idea is just showing that, you know, there are so many different change makers around the world doing incredible things. It doesn't matter where they're from, what sector they're from the global north, from the global south, from all corners of the earth. Just there are people doing incredible things, and it just brings to life some really amazing stories of different people. So that's kind of the idea of it. And you can, as I say, you can find it on Ty Unearthed. And our website, we have to redo our website. It's not we are going to be updating it next year, but if you go to theinternationalexchange.co.uk, you will certainly get a taste of what we're doing. We've got different programs, but we're in a stage of really cool expansion. So we've got lots more coming. It's just not there. So
Brilliant.
It will all be there, but it gives you an idea.
Yeah. And also, I think that it's one of those things, isn't it? And websites are always out of date. We always need to kind of be adding more and doing different things to them.
Yeah.
I love the idea that people can listen to your podcast, they can get inspired by different people. And obviously that's the reason I do this podcast. Like, let's talk to different people about different angles on WorkJoy, being able to see what other people do. And if people can get in touch with you via that, we'll also put all these links into the show notes so that people can click directly through.
And send me an email. If you want to send me an email, feel free. I'm more than happy. I love getting just messages from people. And LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a good one as well. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn, Phillipa White.
We will do that. Well, Phillipa, it's been wonderful to talk to you today. Thank you for sharing so much about your own personal story and the story of Ty and how experiential learning can really have a benefit in many, many different directions. So it's been wonderful to talk to you today.
Thank you. It's been such an honor. I've loved it. Thank you so much, Beth.
Well, a huge thank you to Phillipa White for joining me today on the WorkJoy Jam. There are so many wonderful and interesting bits about our conversation that it's hard for me to pick a few, but I will do my best. I think the first thing is this idea that a moment in your career, well, actually really in your life, that can really influence what it is that you do. And I love this idea of like really listening to the niggle. And Phillipa talked a couple of times there about, you know, lying on a bed for 8 hours or sitting in a chair for 4 hours and just allowing whatever that niggle is to become something, to become an idea, to become a solution, to really connect with it. And also that the thing to really help you to move any idea forward is doing that networking, doing those information interviews. I think it's a great way of thinking about these things. And then thinking about getting culturally intelligent leadership in our world by stepping outside of our comfort zone, stepping outside of our normal working routines and patterns, stepping outside of our own culture, of the things that we know well, and really putting ourselves outside our comfort zones and into that real edge of stretch, right into it, and the benefits that that can have. I really loved her idea of this, you know, the beautiful constraints, the things that help us be more innovative. And there's so many things that we think about that if we actually really look at them, if we look at things in a different way, there's probably inspiration in everything that we do. And the idea that when you really step into some of those challenges, we get to understand the real edges and how many things we can achieve and what we can do, and to get that real sense of purpose in our lives through doing something a little bit more experimental and experiential as well. So a huge thank you to Phillipa for such great advice and for sharing her career with us. We will put all of those links to Phillipa in our show notes, so do click on those. If you're keen to think about more about WorkJoy, do head to all of our other episodes on the WorkJoy Jam. There are people from many different walks of life, different backgrounds, that will be really interesting to listen to. If you want to go a little bit further, we also have our Club WorkJoy, which is a wonderful community of people. Again, probably different from all the people that you spend most of your time with. A great place to come to learn. We have guest speakers, we have group coaching sessions, we have a wonderful platform where people can share and connect. Do have a little look at clubworkjoy.com if you are seeking a little more connection and some different perspectives. And finally, the WorkJoy book, A Toolkit for a Better Working Life, is available at all of the good local bookstores and on Amazon. If you're looking for some real practical things to help you get a little bit more joy in your working life, it might be just the book for you. Lovely to speak to you all today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait for you to listen to the next one.